This video is dedicated to Michael Rosenbaum, who is in my opinion, the best Lex Luthor ever. So this year, I was able to attend Dragon Con and got to meet Michael Rosenbaum for maybe a couple seconds. Didn't let him talk much, which is usually something that I do. And I told him about the time that I met Jeffery Epstein when I was 16 years old.
Thank you so much, man. You rock.
Hey, it sucks that you're leaving so soon. Said it sucks that you're leaving so soon.
I know.
I wanted to tell you a story about how I gave Jeffrey Epstein the idea for his island when I was 16 years old. And then on top of that, in 2003, I ran the logistical demographics behind Trump's electoral college win.
And so I didn't really get to tell him the whole story. So this is the story about how I believe that Jeffrey Epstein got the idea for his island from me. So my mom took me and my brother on vacation to Cancun, Mexico in 1993. And one of the things my mom likes to do is when she gets to an area, she asks about everything that's going on at the hotel with the management and staff in case there's something like special going on that she can like let us know. And so when we got there, about the day after we got there, this was at the Grand Oasis in Cancun when they were opening the Pyramids hotels. And Mom told me that there was some Victoria's Secrets models doing a swimsuit shoot out on the beach, and I might want to get up early in the morning and go check it out. So I got up about 5:30 in the morning, went down to the pool area to set up and see where they were setting up to watch their photo shoot. So I found a lounge chair that was in the pool area that was in direct line of sight to where they were taking a photo shoot on the beach. And I had some binoculars with me so I could, check them out close up. And I was reading this book by John Fowles that my 10th grade English teacher had recommended to our class because he was like, you really want to check out this book. It's much better than The French Lieutenant's Woman. And he told us that this book was originally, the working title was titled The God Game. So I got out and I'm sitting in the lounge chair, and this is probably about like 6:15 in the morning because the sun comes up really early down in Cancun, and I'm scoping the girls out on the beach, and I've got my book like this. And so when the girls are looking back towards the pool area, I pull up my book, and then when they're, focusing on their shoot, I'm, looking at them binoculars, and then I see that they're starting to come back and look my way. I put my book up like that. And so this was really early in the morning, and there was hardly anyone else in the pool area except for this one guy. And he's kind of looking at me a little agitated kind of, and he's moving from lounge chair to lounge chair, like he's just really focused in on me, and he's acting like all sketchy. But 16 years old, I didn't realize how sketchy this little thing is. So I see him and we make eye contact. I'm like, hey, come over and talk. So he comes over and sits down in the lounge chair next to me, and he leans over a little bit and he says, do you like the girls? And I told him, I said, well, I specifically got up early in the morning to enjoy the beautiful view and to read my book. And anybody who knows me, if you ask me about what book I'm reading, I'm fixing to talk your ear off for probably the next 30 minutes to an hour until you just go, I can't deal with that guy. So I told the guy who came up to me, I was like, well, I'm reading John Fowles' The Magus, and it was originally titled The God Game. He's like, well, what's it about? And I was like, well, it's about this English professor who gets a job on an island as a private tutor. But when he goes to the island, he doesn't realize that the rich benefactor, who's like a multi-millionaire, owns the entire island, and everyone on the island is like an actor, or they're part of this group that take him through existential experiences to modify and shape and change his worldview and to alleviate inhibitions that he may have learned growing up on the mainland. It's kind of like his education into like the world. And then I, discuss, the psychological manipulation that's like going on in the book, and there's like all sorts of different things. And that conversation was about 20 minutes, and then that guy starts shaking almost like he's going to go Quaker, and then he just gets up and walks out of the pool area, and just like a straight beeline out of the pool area. And I kind of got the impression either I talked his ear off or that guy was going to write that down. So I hang out at the pool for a little while longer, and then the girls start coming in from the beach. So there's that little area, where you wash your sand off your sandals and everything. So I was like, well, now I can just like walk by them and get like a close-up view. Back then, and still kind of now, I'm a little afraid of girls. Not really afraid of them, but I'm weary of them. And so I was walking out, and then I see the same guy that I was talking to. He's talking to the lady who was running the photo shoot, which was like this black-haired lady with short bobbed haircut. And he leans over to me as I'm walking out on the beach, and he points one of the girls out, and he says, "That's so-and-so." I remember her name starting with an M. Later I looked her up and found out who she was after this guy's face came up, and the Jeffrey Epstein case broke, and I was like, oh my God, that's the guy I was talking to. So he leans over and points to this girl, and she's fiddling with her sandal, and she looks up at me, and must have been tired from the beach, because she had a face like, oh, I'm exhausted. And he pointed her out. That's so-and-so. She's a neurosurgeon. And I just looked at him and I was like, cool. And I walked on out on the beach. Later, when I looked it up, I found out that was Melanie Walker. And she wasn't a neurosurgeon then, but later in 1998 she graduated from school, and I think now she's like head of Washington State University neurosurgery department or something like that.
I'm Melanie Walker. I'm an endovascular neurosurgeon at the University of Washington. Almost every cell in the human body has little batteries inside of it, and those batteries are called mitochondria. Mitochondria aren't so different than the batteries you find in your smartphone. In fact, sometimes when your phone is really low on charge, it seems like it's broken. It's not your phone that's broken, it just needs a little boost. Same thing goes for your cells. Sometimes when we assume that a tissue is dying or dead, maybe what it needs is a little bit of energy. My colleagues and I believe that we can take mitochondria from healthy cells and replace them into sick cells in your...
And when I was reading the whole Epstein story, because that was my one and only contact with Epstein, talking about this book about a guy who owns an island that, plays psychological games on people. And so I looked up the Melanie Walker, and she met Epstein in 1992. And then also I heard on the news that Ghislaine Maxwell, her father died in 1992, so that would have been like an interesting time to to have that like brief contact, because it's like that's kind of like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another chapter. And so that's pretty much the story of how I think that I may have given Jeffrey Epstein the idea for his island. Now, he may have had his own ideas, but that chance meeting and the subsequent reading of this book might have given him the ideas, because I looked it up, and now this was in 1993, and he bought Little St. James in 1997. One other thing, one of the reasons why it was so easy for me to remember the time frame that this stuff happened in, it was in March of 1993, and I'm from Rome, Georgia, so it was when we flew from Cancun back into Hartsfield, Atlanta airport. There was 2 to 3 feet of snow on the ground because we had this freak blizzard in 1993, and it made all this time frames really easy to remember, because it's super odd to come into Georgia and find a few feet of snow on the ground. And I wonder if there's anything else to say. I had a great time on that vacation. Cancun was really fun, being 16 years old. And, had I known that, the girl he was pointing me out to, Melanie Walker, was like exceptionally intelligent, then I probably would have not walked out on the beach and might have said hello. But, back then, still I was, way too jittery around girls, and I most likely would have not been able to talk. My throat just kind of like seizes up when there's like a pretty girl around. I'm like, oh, I can't talk. And that happened to me. Another girl that I met at a skating rink during my grandmother's birthday up in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And that's kind of an interesting story because the girl who came up to me, I'm pretty sure that she's famous, because I'm pretty sure it's this girl who ended up being in film and stuff. So it was my grandmother's birthday. We were up in Gatlinburg. This was like in June, and this is in '93 as well. And I go up to the ice skating rink in Gatlinburg. And I'm looking over the upper railing down on the ice skating rink, and there's this girl who's just gliding around doing figure eights with this beautiful smile on her face, just smiling at everyone, and just circling the ring. And I'm just sitting there just completely awestruck, and I'm like, man, I got to get down on the ice, even though I didn't know how to ice skate. I was like, I got to get down on the ice and check this girl out. So I go down and pay for my skates, and I'm in the little area where you take your shoes off and put your skates on. So I'm like lacing up my skates, and I see her like glide by the railing right where you can like step off. And then she comes around one other time, and I almost have my skates laced up, and she steps off and then comes over and sits like 3 feet away from me. And I mean, the little benches where it was like 2 benches, and she could have sat really far away, but she sat like 3 feet away from me. And I just completely like seized up, and I was like, I could not say a word to her. And this girl had just gotten off the ice. She had this radiant energy that was so warm and welcoming. I had never felt anything like that in my life. And my throat just seized up, and I'm just sitting here like, looking at her like this, probably giving her like a stink face, and just waiting for my throat just to kind of like, chill out so I could like say hello. And before I could say hello, she got up and like walked away like with a oomph, and for like, I don't know, that night I just totally cried because I couldn't talk to her, because I was like 16, and anyway. So, and after that I was just like, hey, when can we go back to Gatlinburg? I just wanted to like borrow the car and like drive up to Gatlinburg and see if she was up there skating. And later, I'm pretty sure that was Sunny Lane, back when she was still training for the Olympics before she got her bunions. And man, I wish I had been able to just say hello. I mean, my heart was just like going like just like beating You know, it's a good thing I had a strong heart, or otherwise I might have had a heart attack at that point in time. But that's those two. And I told, yeah, what was that I was thinking again? Oh well, I'll probably cut that video off at that point in time. But that was the time I met Sunny Lane. So I've gotten to meet a lot of really interesting individuals in my life, working at the places that I've worked. I've always pretty much worked service level jobs, but I've always read tons and tons of books. So I've always been able to converse with people at most any level that they're at, unless it's just an absolutely beautiful girl who sits down next to me, and then, you know, I just turn into like a stick in the mud until like my system calms down, which can take like, you know, back then it could take like, you know, 15 to 20 minutes. Now that I'm like in my mid 40s, things are a lot more chill. I think it has to do with a throat surgery I had when I was really young. I had a tumor in my throat, and when I was 5 years old, and I had to go to the hospital, and they removed it. I mean, I never felt like I had a tumor or anything like that, but that's what my parents told me. And I think that messed with my endocrine system a little bit, made it little differences in my emotions. Hopefully I didn't talk that out too quickly. Man, these Santitas are good. Also, that's a picture of a CENTCOM. It's a very important early satellite launch back in the 60s that was monumentally important when it came to building out a lot of systems across the nation and world. I also got to talk to the preacher guy from The Walking Dead when I was up there. And that was pretty fun. I could not recognize him when I saw him, even though I've like seen him on TV like so many times. I was like, "You look so familiar," and didn't even recognize that the Walking Dead like sign was just right behind him. And then I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, you know, I'm being stupid." I also I got to talk to Erin Gray, and that was just absolutely wonderful. She's really super nice lady. Irma Deering from the original Buck Rogers. And right next to her, while I was waiting on Michael Rosenbaum to finally show up, was Laura Vandervoort, who played Supergirl a number of times on the Smallville show. And I talked to her for, I don't know, maybe about like 15 minutes, and she had just written and produced her own movie, and she was telling me about it, and I was like so taken aback at how intelligent and creative she is. I'd always seen her like in Smallville and a couple other things, but when you meet an actor in person, a lot of times they're different than their characters, and I was really taken back. Like that girl is super creative. And when I was sitting there talking to her, I've always had this, not one of the stories I've had in my minds that I wanted to see produced, which is from my favorite science fiction author, Theodore Sturgeon. It's called The Education of Drusilla Strange. And there's this one character in that story whose name's Baps. And she's kind of described as a blonde with a blue dress, which, that totally fits Vandervoort. And she's kind of like wry, sardonic, and she doesn't take anything at face value. And at first in the story, she's kind of a bit character, but then at the very end, her character makes a big wallop, and it ties the entire story together. And I would love to see that story done as a pilot and then fleshed out into like a 5-season story arc dealing with the cultures that these chicks come from, because it's mainly a female-driven storyline, which is about this race of women who are spacefaring, but only 1 in 50 million births is a male, so they're all women, and it's about their culture and how one or a number of them break the rules of their culture and then they get banished to Earth. And it's really amazing story. And yeah, but it should definitely be produced because it could be such a wonderful vehicle for displaying male and female gender roles in different power settings. Because Theodore Sturgeon was a real genius when it came to not only writing science fiction, but writing science fiction that was really a vehicle to teach about the human condition. So you read Theodore Sturgeon, you're not just reading science fiction, you're reading in-depth character structures of people that exist in the real world. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to sit down with him and talk to him. I hear that he might have been one of Campbell's kids as well. Joseph Campbell, the Power of Myth. Kind of like L. Ron Hubbard and Heinlein and Asimov, because a lot of these guys not only were science fiction authors, but they were also brought into military think tanks after World War II to kind of envision different future possibilities. L. Ron Hubbard had an amazing dream that he was going to use Scientology to create, and I think after his death that kind of may have gotten sidelined, but it was an absolutely amazing dream that L. Ron Hubbard had, and it dealt with the healing of the planet and creating systems of production which did not require fossil fuel inputs, because I believe, especially reading his book Battlefield Earth, that he's a little bit against the burning of hydrocarbons for energy production, just like Nikola Tesla was. I think one of Nikola Tesla's quotes that I read in, I think it was Margaret Cheney's book, was Tesla said that if fossil fuels were employed in the production of electricity through his polyphase induction motors and generators, then within 100 years mankind would be facing the greatest crisis that it has ever faced in its entire history. And I didn't really understand that when I first read it, but after learning a number of mechanisms and systems that are ongoing in how the Earth maintains its inner heat, and therefore the fluidity of the convection currents which power the geomagnetic field, I totally understand what Nikola Tesla was talking about now that I'm much older. A lot of times when you read a book or you imbibe information, it takes a number of years to actually begin to understand that information. And right now we are at the crux of that crisis, and there is a lot of technology right now that can be employed to take the heat off. And while I don't believe that it's possible to reverse climate change, and I believe that climate change is biblical because of a number of passages that are in the Bible, speaking about the change of the old earth, the destruction of the old earth, and the creation and the birth of the new earth, which I believe is climate change is instrumental in that. And climate change is not just an atmospheric event, it's also an internal event. And I'll explain that later in another, hey Kitty, in another video, because it gets kind of complex. Even though the overall system is pretty simple to understand. My cat's walking around back over there. It's the first time she's been able to get out of the house in a number of months. In L. Ron Hubbard's dream, if everyone got behind the physical construction that he wanted to build with the money that he was raising through Scientology, it could literally, in my opinion, open the giant doors to heaven on earth. And I'll explain what those facilities were or are, because that dream didn't just start with L. Ron Hubbard. It's actually an older dream. He was just part of the link in the chain of creating the systems which were required to make that dream a reality. That dream actually goes back a very long time, and it will allow the Olympic torch of civilization to be carried through the tribulations of the climate change events that the planet is fixing to go through. And even if we weren't going to go through all that stuff, which we are, the creation of those facilities would be the greatest luxury resort manufacturing facilities that man's ever created, in my opinion. They would truly be 5 wonders of the world. And with what Campbell's kids had envisioned, it would also take the price of achieving orbit and spaceflight, and it would decrease it by about 95%, because it changes the logistical resource gathering patterns to where it's almost like everything comes to you, and then you just put it together with all the free solar, wind, and wave energy that is to be had in the areas that they wanted to locate these places. And it also creates the ability to maintain the population of the planet without having to drive the Haber-Bosch chemical reaction with hydrocarbon, fossil fuels. I mean, it's an amazing vision. But even though the technology for it has existed for over 50 years, there's never been the will to make it. and there's been a lot of what do you call it? A lot of barriers to its creation in the nation-state political systems. Even though the foundation has been working in the background to make these things possible, there's always political roadblocks because these facilities would be so valuable. It's kind of like, the people who like to play King of the Hill and want to own stuff and own everything. It's like they're going to fight each other over it, over their creation, which is going to cause the project to fail. Kind of like when you take a bunch of crabs and you put them in a bowl. And if you just have one crab in that bowl, that crab can get out of the bowl. But if you got like 3 or 4 crabs in that bowl, when one of them starts to get out, another one will reach over its claw and pull it back in. So there was a number of things that had to happen in order to clean out the resistance. And that resistance mainly is created by greed and lower base human fight or flight responses. I think he sees you, nature buddy. So this video is dedicated to Michael Rosenbaum, the best Lex Luthor ever.
Miraculous times you appeared in just the right place at just the right moment. Almost as if you possessed powers and abilities beyond those of mortal men.
And one hell of a sorority boy.
Say, that's weird.
What the hell is on your skirt, man? Oh.
Gum or something.
What flavor was it?
What else was he in? Oh yeah, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. That's such a great movie.
Now take it easy, young man.
Everything I'm saying here is true.
Of course it is. There's no reason for it not to be. That's all we're after here is the truth.